I always looked for a medium which would allow me to travel and work at the same time. Originally I came from sculpture, I didn't study photography, I studied sculpture for 6 years, and as you can imagine, the materials are too heavy to travel with. You need a lot of storage and a lot of people who help you, otherwise you can't move a piece of work. And I always liked traveling, and I always photographed things, so at one stage I just decided this was a better medium for me. And I also never liked drawing, making drawings or sketches, so the camera is replacing all of that. It's my sketchbook, it's my memory. It's an artificial memory aid. With time, memory fades, but the camera is actually an accurate reflection of what you have seen and what you have experienced to a certain extent. So it's like a milestone from time to time. So you take a photograph, and that photograph reflects that moment in time, even if it's a hundredth of a second, it doesn't really matter. And film adds the narrative to it. I'm interested in how different cultures express their beliefs and how they use images or objects within that framework of their belief system. In the last few years I've examined anything to do with belief systems and superstition, and sometimes I have related that to science. Last year I went to Japan and started to work on shrines and altars and sacred sites. And again, you had a very different visual expression. I started to investigate in all the foggy areas between science and belief, and superstition was interesting to me too. Why do people use a talisman when they go on travel, and why do they have a little altar in the car? Why do they have a little Christophorus in the car, for example? And if you ask around, even people are the most rational people, a lot of them still do things just in case. And I find that very interesting. The use of an object or an image can be seen as a key also to historical and cultural circumstances. And it's interesting to see when you take all those photographs and films into one gallery space, you start to contrast the different expressions, and you still know exactly what's going on, although you might not be linked to one particular religion. It's very clear. It's like a universal language. After living in Europe for most of my life, I moved to Australia about a year ago. And I had been traveling through Australia for quite a bit. About 8 months I lived in the Northern Territory, out bush, which was a great experience. And I started to investigate in sacred sites of the Aborigines and compared that with altars I had photographed in Europe. in sacred places. I'd done a series on sacred mountains, for example, in Iceland. I had photographed sacred mountains also in Spain, and the sacred land of the Navajo Indians in the United States was another series I did. So these were all natural altars, but then I contrasted those with man-made altars, which Spain is full of. And it was interesting to me that while in most of the areas I had been, you had something very specific which was holy, like a mountain or like a holy cave, something like that. But in the Northern Territory, the Aborigines considered the land to be holy. I can just imagine how fear and uncertainty influences people to get hold of an object which then charges energy, which takes this fear away like a talisman or a saint. When I was in the Northern Territory living out in the outbacks, I came across a lot of fear myself because, I mean, one feels pretty small and helpless at night, for example. You don't see anything, you sleep in a sleeping bag outside. And there are all sorts of animals crawling over you, or they're next to you, and they're just like eating grass or whatever, and you have no idea what it is because you can't see a thing. And they are just better than you are. So you feel very limited, and I think this limitation and the unknown and the idea of danger in there can have a great effect on you.